Hey guys, welcome back to episode number 4 of the Les Paul Dream Build. Pretty excited on the progress so far. Episode 3, we worked on the neck, got the frets crowned, leveled, and polished, as well as the binding was replaced. So in today's episode, episode 4, we're going to glue the neck and the body together. So let's get to it. So here's the plan for what I'm going to do here. So obviously I got my neck and the body. So I've already tested the fit and everything lines up perfectly, so we don't have to worry about anything. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be using Titebond 3 glue. This stuff, I heard mixed reviews online, but I've asked some actual guitar luthiers about this stuff, and they actually recommend this. So guitar luthiers recommend this. I'm going to use it. So Titebond 3 wood glue. I'm going to put a little bit, not a ton, just a thin amount, and to kind of coat the bottom and the sides of the cavity here, the neck pocket, all the way up to the end. And then I'm going to put a little bit here on the heel of the neck and a little bit on the sides. I'm going to put it in, and then what I'm going to do, I got this flat piece of wood that I'm going to put on the underneath, on the back of the guitar, because once that's back there, I'm going to be using these clamps to hold everything together, and I'm going to be applying a good amount of pressure. So the wood acts as a way to not gouge and dent the backside of the guitar, because that's a very real possibility. So I'm going to have one clamp that goes directly onto this part of the wood here, and I don't care about denting or anything about this, because this just goes underneath the pickup. You're never going to see it. So that's going to go there. The other clamp is going to go directly on top of the fretboard. And so to prevent any dents or anything, I'm going to be putting a sock that I folded up a couple times on top, and then this metal plate to disperse the force evenly so that it goes on like that, and I can clamp down nice and hard, and I won't damage the fretboard or the frets, because I've already done enough of that. I don't want to do any more. So I guess let's get started. So this is a fresh bottle of Titebond 3. You definitely don't need a fresh one. For me, we didn't have this at home, so I had to go out and get it. So it's probably got no seal on it. Okay. All right, so I'm not going to speed this up. I'm just going to talk through this as I go along. So before I mention anything else, I've got this rag here as well, just so I can wipe off my fingers on this afterwards. This is just a sleeve that I cut off. Actually, this shirt. So that's kind of funny. I didn't even think about that. So I'm going to wipe my fingers off on this, and then any excess glue that seeps out as I press the neck into the pocket, I'm going to use this to take it off. You want to definitely take off any excess glue now while it's still wet, because you can get it off. Afterwards, if it seeps out and you let it sit and it cures, it's going to be really hard to take that out. So just wanted to get that out of the way. So let's go ahead, put a good amount here. Again, I'm going to use just my finger. I got my rag here. My finger to coat the entire pocket. And of course, I'm going to coat the sides as well. So I get all the way up to the pocket. It doesn't have to be perfect. You definitely want to get it as good as you possibly can, but it doesn't have to be perfect. At the end of the day, you want enough glue in there that it'll bond nice and tight. I'm going to put a little bit more in there, just for the sides. There you go. And same thing on this side. Get this thing nice and coated in glue. All right, perfect. That's looking pretty good. Nice amount of glue in there. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing on the back side of the neck. All right, there you have it. So I've got this clamped in. So again, the purple plate is acting as a way to disperse, kind of like a washer on a bolt, same kind of idea. And then the sock is acting as a protective insulation, I guess, so that the metal's not pressing directly on the frets. There's kind of some cushion in between. I don't have a jig I can put on the fretboard. I don't have the resources to make one. And then I've got the inner block being pressed by the clamp. So I'm gonna let this sit now for probably about 2 days, and then afterwards we're gonna come in and see how the glue holds up. So I'm gonna let this sit now, and we'll come back in 2 days. It's been 2 days now, more like 2.5 days. So this is my first chance that I've had to look at the guitar since I put the glue on. So let's go ahead first of all and just take the clamps off, and let's see what kind of job that we did. So all right, so my first initial reaction is we've got a neck that's glued in. There is no play at all. Like, this thing is solid. This is now a one-piece guitar. So the whole neck has been glued into the pocket. There's really not a whole lot of gap. I don't know if you remember, originally there was a big gap right at the bottom there. That's been pressed in pretty tight. And there's little gaps kind of along the sides. If I can just get the stupid camera to focus. Come on. So right along the sides, there's a bit of a gap on both sides. So what I'm going to do is go in there with wood filler and seal that up. So now what some people do when they get a kit where the guitar and the neck come separate, they generally do the finish sanding and even some of the finish first, and then they glue them together. The reason why I didn't do that is because since there were so many imperfections with the kit, I wanted to get the neck on and then work on the guitar as a whole, because now I can go in with the wood filler and make this joint the way I want. I can make it nice and round and nice and smooth, not have any gaps there. Also, as well, this pickup cavity is not routed very well. It's all over the place. It's not uniform at all. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a wood filler and smooth this top cavity out so that's flush with the neck. Because when I put the pickup on, this edge is exposed, and so obviously I don't want that. So another couple things that I have to consider with this guitar is this is actually a flame maple veneer. So what a veneer is, it's like a paper thin layer of wood. So this is literally like 1 millimeter or 2 millimeters thick, this top piece. So I cannot sand very much. I'm gonna have to be sanding with high grits, and unfortunately I kind of sanded through the veneer in some spots up here because I didn't think about the fact whether or not this is a veneer or an actual flame maple top. So the difference, a flame maple top is actually a thick chunk of wood that goes right on top, and the whole thing is flame maple. So you can sand as much as you want and you'll never burn the flame maple off. Those are more on higher end kits, expensive kits, because that's more wood that you need to burn to make it flamed. With a cheaper kit like this one, more affordable kit, it's a veneer. It's a very thin layer. That being said, it is real wood, so it's not going to affect the tone of the guitar like that. And plus, it'll actually pop through like real wood would. And so I'm going to go ahead now and just kind of get the wood filler in and start finish sanding. So what my idea is obviously I'll take the switches and everything out, but I'm going to start with probably 320 grit, 400 grit, and then work my way up to 600 grit. And that's probably all I'm going to do for the top, because again, I don't have much material to work with. It's very thin. As for the sides, obviously you can see there's places where I've gone in with wood filler already. The neck, the headstock, I'm going to go on the headstock, like I'm going to go nuts. I'll start with 220, 320, 400, and 600, even up to 800 to get this thing ready. Nice and smooth, no scratches for the finishing. But before I do any other sanding, what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to glue the nut in place, because right now there's no nut up here. So in order to do that, that's also why I've left the bridge posts in, is because now I've got the new nut, which again is a Graphtec Tusk XL nut. I'm going to install this, and then I'm going to put 2 of the tuning pegs in, just the low and the high E strings, and reinstall the bridge as well as the stop piece, the stop tail piece. So that way now the strings will actually have some tension on the nut, and have it pressed firmly down. So when I put the glue in, the nut's not going to go anywhere. It's going to sit exactly where it needs to be once the glue is dried. So I am going to first just install the hardware back on. All right, so I've got the nut on there now. Again, just with the high and the low E strings. The stupid thing will just focus. There we go. So yeah, I've got the high E and the low E through the neck, through the nut rather, and all the way down to the bridge. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use the crazy glue and just use a very slight amount. You don't need a lot when you're gluing a nut on. In fact, some guitars the nut isn't even glued in. Now that wouldn't be the case on a Les Paul because the nut rests right on the end of the fretboard. But on like a Fender style, it actually is slotted and it notches right into the fretboard. Sometimes they don't even glue it in. It's not necessary in that kind of application. So for here, it has to be glued in because otherwise it'll fall right off and it'll move around, which you don't want. You only want enough glue on there so that it just won't fall off. I mean, if you take a hammer to it and knock it off, I mean, it's not really meant to have that much holding power anyways. And besides, if you do a lot of glue on there and you do need to replace the nut afterwards, it's going to be very difficult to get it off without damaging the finish on your guitar or the guitar in general. Trust me, I've had some nightmares when it comes to replacing nuts. I've damaged quite a few fretboards in my time. So we're just going to use, again, the super glue from Gorilla Glue. I'm just going to grab... I had a toothpick. I have no clue where it went, so I've kind of just been using the side dot material. I've just got a nice stick of this. It's thin enough where I can use it as a toothpick. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to smear it on the top of the fretboard like this, and then I'll stick the nut on at the very end. So I'm just going to probably just a drop and then spread it across, and then put the nut back on and just make sure it's nice and tight. Then I'm going to leave it for the night, and tomorrow we'll be doing the all the finish sanding and all the fun stuff. So I've got the guitar nut set, and I'm just going to leave this overnight. The strings are going to act as kind of a clamp just to hold the nut in place. I've got it pretty much exactly how I want it. There's like a tiny bit of a gap on this side, which I'm thinking on the best way to fill that in. I'm not really sure. But at the end of the day, it's not really going to affect much. I'll probably go in with wood filler on the top just to get it flush with the headstock, but I'll do that tomorrow when I take the strings off and look at how the nut is doing. But yeah, so we got the glue dried. We got the neck installed on the guitar. Next, I'm gonna go with wood filler, fill in everything that I think needs to be filled in, and then start finish sanding. So I'm gonna do that tomorrow. We'll let this sit overnight. So I'll see you then. Quick little update. I've gone in with the wood filler at a couple different spots. So got the wood filler around the nut to kind of seal in any kind of gaps or whatever, and I've gone in around the neck with the wood filler. It's actually been a couple days since the last thing you saw. I've gotten really busy. So what I'm going to do now is something that I don't think anyone's really tried. So I'm only putting an inlay on the headstock. That's my inlay idea, and it's going to go on the headstock. So the way I'm going to do this is I've got the plastic pieces cut out. So that's obviously reversed, but that is what I'm going to be using. This is about 5 hours of work cutting this out of plastic. And this is like the perloid plastic kind of material. And that's going to go on here. So what my plan is, I'm going to glue this plastic perloid, which isn't too thick. It's a little thick, to the top. Once it's on there, I'm going to get my wood filler and cover the entire top of the headstock and then sand it down flush. So it's going to look like this inlay has been inserted into the headstock, where in reality it's been glued on top and then filled with wood all around. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my masking tape here, put it on here, and get these stickers off. These are the only stickers I have to work with. I'm going to put them on, then I'm going to take my Sharpie and color all around and make sure I get it all around the sticker. What that's going to do is when I lift the sticker back on, the outlines are all that's going to be left. And then I'm going to take these plastic bits that I've cut out and glue them inside of those outlines. I'm going to need these stickers afterwards because once I go into the wood filler and once I sand it down, these stickers are going to cover that perloid again. So when I go in to stain the wood, it doesn't stain the perloid. So then once the staining's done, I can just lift this off and there shouldn't be much stain. If there is, I'll just kind of go in and fine tune it with my razor blade. So I'm going to guide you through that process right now. There you go. That's more or less what the design is going to look like at the end. So I've got the sticker down. Now I'm going to go in and, like I said, outline the whole thing in Sharpie, and then take the sticker off again, and then glue the perloid on. Okay, I've got the Sharpie outline done. You'll notice that I omitted this little section right here in the middle. It's not super duper important because when I put the new sticker on, I'm just matching it with the outline, and then the rest is getting wood filler anyways. So even if I leave that spot, it's not a huge deal. So now let's try peeling this sticker off again. Perfect, I got the sticker back off. Just gonna put it back on here for the time being with the masking tape on and everything, just so that, you know, I don't lose it. And I'm gonna take the plastic pieces, and I'm not really sure what kind of glue I'm gonna be using. I'm still, you know, on the fence. I think I'll probably be just using the super glue that I had from Gorilla Glue, and just kind of putting little dots on there. So I got a nice little stencil for me to use now, and I can stick the perloid on there, and then so that stuff's gonna need about 10 seconds to dry and 24 hours to cure. What I'm thinking is I'm gonna slap it on. I'm only gonna give it like maybe a couple minutes. It'll be dry by then. It's not gonna be moving around. It's just gonna be bonding. And when I'm using the wood filler, it's not like I'm gonna be moving the perloid around anyways. And besides, the wood filler is going to need a couple hours to solidify anyways. So it would make sense to kind of have the wood filler and the glue in the same drying period. Otherwise, I'm going to be here all day doing this, right? So we'll do that next. I think my dad actually ended up using the super glue, so I'm going to have to go downstairs and get it. So I will be right back. All right, I've got the perloid on there. Just used the super glue, got it on there nice and good. Let's have a look at the camera. Yeah, so I did sand the top down. So this material came with like a top layer of plexiglass. So I sanded it down to about 2,000 grits. You won't see the scratch marks. The reason why I dulled it out is because when you put the clear coat on afterwards, you kind of want the finish. Sorry, you want the underlying material to be kind of dull, so the finish provides all that sparkle afterwards. Otherwise, you're going to have too much of it. So now, this is pretty much already solidified, this glue. It's this, like if I were to pressurize this and move it, I wouldn't be able to move it. So it's going to take 24 hours for it to cure, obviously, because now the glue is still kind of wet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go in now with my wood filler. I don't really need to build up a lot of this. Like this inlay is only, I don't know, like 2 millimeters or 1.5 millimeters thick, which isn't a whole lot. So I'm gonna go in now, and they recommend using a putty knife. I'm honestly just gonna use my finger and just smear it all over the place. If I get it on top of the inlay, it's not a big deal because once I sand it down, I'll sand down to the inlay. And so it's actually better if I put too much wood filler, because then when I sand it, I can get it sanded down. It's always easier to sand off material than it is to sand on material, because that's not really practical. So let's do that now. All right, so I've got the headstock all filled up with the wood filler. You might have noticed I put those tape balls through the holes. That's so that I can get really deep with the filler and get right around those holes. Crap, there's actually a little bit that I forgot to do. I'll do that right now. So essentially, once this is dry, it's going to take a couple hours just because I put so much on there. And I need this stuff to be rock solid when I go to sand it down. So I'm going to wait that whole duration. I've got a whole bunch of other stuff that I got to get to today anyways. So I'll go do that. But basically what I'm going to do when I come back is I'm going to start by sanding down the headstock just because that's the most recent thing. And we'll make sure that that's good to go before we move on to the rest of the finish. Damn it. This is where it helps to use a putty knife. Of course, with me, I'm cutting corners. I'm just trying to do the best that I can with my hands. That's good enough. And so this wood filler stuff takes a couple hours if you're using. So if you're just using light repairs, I'm talking like you're just filling in a little hole, you can literally sand it down in like 15 minutes. But since I've put so much on there, I've pretty much emptied half the bottle. It's going to take between 2 to 8 hours. That's what it says on the packaging. So I'm going to wait a while, and then once I come back, we'll knock the tape balls out of the holes, and we'll sand it down flush with the block until we can see that inlay again. And as far as the corners go, I couldn't really get the filler flush to the corner. Stupid thing, it'll focus. Alright. So I couldn't really get it flush to the corners, but that's okay, because I'm probably going to go in and taper it down. And so it's not like a hard edge. And even if I can't get it right to the edge, I'll go in with wood filler again. I'm not in like a hurry for this guitar build. I'm taking my time. I want to be diligent with it. So I'm gonna let this sit now. We'll come back once it's dry and we'll sand it down. All right, it has been about 7 hours now. We are outside for this next step because this wood filler stuff is pretty dusty and it's pretty gross when you go to sand it down. So I ended up off camera putting tape around the edge, and I built that wood filler all the way around, so I've got a nice little hard edge, so I won't even have to taper it down, I don't think. I knocked the tape out of the holes. It didn't really do that great of a job, honestly, so I'll probably have to redo the holes. But anyways, we're gonna get started on the sanding now for the neck. So I've got my sanding block, so this is 400. Right underneath is 600 and then 800, so I'm gonna be sanding with all 3 grits. So let's cut to the chase. All right, so that was about 15 minutes of sanding. It's gonna be hard to tell outside, but basically I've got this sanded down nice and flush, and the inlay is starting to look like it's coming out of real wood. So I'm really excited about that. Now you can tell there's cracking all over the place. So I'm gonna have to go in with more wood filler and get this nice and flush, but I'm gonna end the episode here because I've already explained how I did this. I'm gonna do the exact same thing again. This time I don't think I'm gonna have to wait as long. So this episode, we ended up gluing the neck to the body. We got the decals, the inlay cut out, glued in. We got the nut slotted, glued in. So lots of progress made. Next episode, we will definitely be finished sanding. And if we have time, we might even start with some of the staining and the coloring process. But that's a wrap for this episode. Thanks a lot for watching. And until next episode, I'll see you then.